Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a home that size when the wind blows and creaks with every memory it holds. Imagine waking up to the rhythmic drip of water falling into a rusted tin bowl, your ceiling sloping slightly as if it's just. As tired as you are, this isn't a palace. It's not even a cottage. It's what happens when shelter is defined not by comfort, but by necessity. And you live here now. Good luck keeping your socks dry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken not with the stretch of luxury, but with the cautious awareness of a leak. The steady drip, drip, drip that's as familiar as your own heartbeat echoes from the far corner of the room. The pail beneath the leak has done its best through the night, but judging by the slight puddle beside it, it may have surrendered around dawn. The ceiling above it can still be called, that is made of wooden planks, unevenly spaced and slightly warped. Rain from 2 nights ago still lingers between the gaps, weeping slowly into your world. The beam overhead bows ever so slightly, as if tired of supporting this entire operation. You blink a few times and try to orient yourself. The air is heavy, damp, not quite cold, but stubbornly uninviting. It carries with it the layered scent of burnt wood, wet fabric, and something herbal, perhaps the leftover tea that boiled too long yesterday. You're lying on a mattress made of old straw, stuffed into a cloth that was once beige but now wears a patchwork of life's stains. The texture is honest. Every twig and crinkle is accounted for beneath your back, reminding you of your vertebrae in ways you didn't ask for. The blanket over you is thin, woolen, and smells like November. It's been mended so many times that it now resembles more patch than original fabric, each stitch holding together not just warmth, but memory. You remember that brown square in the corner. It came from your old tunic, back when you outgrew it, or it outlived its ability to look respectable. To your left, the wall groans slightly. It's not made of stone, but wood and mud, and it has absorbed years of fog, fire, smoke, and secrets. A spider you've nicknamed with affection climbs silently across the cracked frame of the shuttered window. The glass is clouded permanently. Looking through it is less a matter of seeing and more a matter of guessing. There's a draft, of course. There's always a draft. Even when the weather outside is calm, the house insists on inviting air from somewhere. You tuck your arms closer to your chest and feel the chill settle like a houseguest with no plans to leave. You glance up. The leak's rhythm continues, steady, predictable, comforting in a strangely depressing way. Historians still discuss whether working-class homes in the Regency era were built to maximize efficiency or merely to avoid complete collapse. Judging by your ceiling, it might have been both. You roll slightly, and the straw mattress groans. Beneath it, the floor is dirt, not metaphorically actual dirt, stamped, packed down, and uneven. You see the trail your feet made last night, coming in from work, still faintly visible, like footprints in sand before the tide comes. Next to the foot of your bed door, what qualifies as a beddies, a brick, just one. You're using it to prop up the leg of the rickety table that holds a half-melted candle, a pewter spoon, and a chipped bowl. The candle gave up around midnight, you think? The spoon has seen better centuries. The bowl, well, it's holding nothing, but somehow still managing to look full of disappointment. There's no fireplace, just a small iron stove in the corner. It wheezes with yesterday's ashes and smells faintly like scorched potato. Above it, the roof has blackened slightly, a reminder that smoke always finds its own way out. Even if you don't provide a chimney dot in this home, everything creaks. The walls, the floors, even your thoughts feel like they need oiling. But it's yours, in the sense that no one's taken it away yet. And that's something. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to delay the full acknowledgement that the day has begun. Outside, there are sounds, distant hooves, voices calling about fish, a door slamming down the alley, but inside, it's just you. The ceiling that leaks like it's crying softly, and the floor that hugs your every step with the loyalty of packed earth. And maybe, just maybe, there's a kind of peace in knowing exactly what to expect from every board, every drip, and every sigh of your very tired house. Section 2. You sit up slowly, as if the ceiling might lower itself in protest. Your spine negotiates with the straw, and you pull the thin blanket tighter around your shoulders, like a royal cobbled one with holes. The smell of smoke and a history of patchwork diplomacy. The light in the room is murky, filtered through a window that's seen better pains. Sunlight doesn't pour in so much as it hesitates. It sort of hovers in the air, unsure if this is the kind of place it's supposed to illuminate. To your right, the wall lets out another subtle groan. You like to think it's whispering encouragement. Yes, yes, you're awake now. You're technically alive. Let's do this. But it could also be structural fatigue. The ceiling, still dripping, has established itself as a passive-aggressive roommate. You glance up just in time to catch a droplet landing squarely in the middle of a wooden bowl that's done more overtime than any living being in the house. It doesn't even flinch anymore, just receives the water with the solemn grace of a monk enduring enlightenment, one drip at a time. You stretch your legs slowly toward the edge of the bedding. One foot lands on the floor, and the cold greets you like an overly familiar stranger. There's no slipper waiting, no rug, just a patch of bare earth packed tight from years of footsteps and memories. The other foot joins it with the same enthusiasm one reserves for stepping into a puddle wearing socks. The floor of your home is not just ground, it's a living archive. Each indentation tells a story. That corner near the stove, that's where the soup spilled last autumn. The dark stain near the threshold. Someone dropped a lantern there years ago. You don't remember who, but the floor does. You shuffle toward the wall where your clothes hang from a nail, not a peg, not a hook. A nail, bent at a weary angle, like it too is tired of holding up the same threadbare tunic and patched trousers every day. You lift your shirt. It's stiff in places it shouldn't be. The fabric smells of old ash and honest work. You slide it on, your arms adjusting to the cold touch of cotton that has seen more repairs than an old ship. Over your shoulder, the blanket slips down. The straw mattress springs back slightly, relieved to be alone for a few minutes. You glance back at it with sympathy. You'll be back soon enough. As you dress, you catch sight of the table, the centerpiece of your home, if only by default. One leg shorter than the others, It wobbles like it's making a point. On top sits your prized possession, a ceramic mug with a chip so large it functions more like a handle extension. Still, it holds liquid most of the time, and that's more than you can say for your boots. You reach for them anyway. They sit near the door, hunched over, like two grumpy old men. The leather is cracked. The soles whisper promises they can't keep. You slip one foot in tight. The other foot meets unexpected dampness. Someone left the window ajar again last night. Possibly you. Probably the wind. Definitely not the cat. Yes, the cat. You look around. He's not on the bed, not on the table. Then you hear a soft thump from the rafters above. You squint. There he is, perched like a judgmental gargoyle on one of the thick beams crossing the ceiling. His eyes narrow in disapproval, as if to say, "Took you long enough." He stretches, yawns, and closes his eyes again. Your suffering bores him. You mutter something that's not quite a curse and not quite affection. It's complicated. The air smells different now awake. A mix of damp wood, coal dust, and ambition. You walk to the stove. It's cold, of course. You open the door and find only ash. You scoop a handful into the tin pail beside it and reach for the small bag of kindling beneath the table. There's not much left, 3 sticks and a dream, but you arrange them carefully and strike the flint. The spark lands nothing. You try again. A little flame, a hopeful curl of smoke. It catches. You lean back slightly as warmth, like a lazy sunbeam, begins to creep from the stove's mouth. It's not much, but it's something. In Regency England, this is a small miracle. Most plebeian homes didn't have full hearths, just iron stoves, or even brick holes where smoke and heat danced chaotically. Historians still debate whether these setups were designed for survival or simply patched together through necessity. What they agree on is this: warmth was hard-won and never permanent. You sit on the stool next to the stove. It wobbles slightly, but holds. You glance around your room, the room that isn't just yours, but everyone's. A shared space, a cramped space, a place with no corners for secrets, but many places for memory. Your fingers hover above the opening in the stove. Heat, real heat. For now, you lean back and close your eyes, not to sleep, just to exist quietly inside a house that shouldn't still be standing, but is, like you. The warmth doesn't last long. The fire, modest and flickering, offers only a suggestion of comfort, like a friend who nods sympathetically but never actually helps carry the weight. Still, you sit beside it a few moments longer, your hands open to the glow, palms up like you're asking for something. Maybe warmth, maybe patience, maybe both. Behind you, the room has begun to stir, not from sound, but from presence, a kind of shifting in the air, a ripple through the stillness. One of the other sleepers turns under a blanket. A cough echoes from the far end of the room, dry and familiar. Someone clears their throat with the kind of gravitas that suggests nothing serious. Just the throat's way of announcing it's still here. You rise, slowly, because fast movements in a home like this are not rewarded, only punished with bumped heads, stubbed toes, or the mysterious scattering of something small and essential. You walk to the wooden wash basin near the window. A bowl and a chipped pitcher sit on a rickety stand, the entire setup doing its best impersonation of furniture. The water inside the pitcher is cold. Of course, you splash your face anyway. The shock travels instantly to your spine, and you hiss like a startled kettle. Still, it's enough to chase off the last remnants of sleep. You glance at the reflection in the water, distorted by a ripple. The you that looks back seems slightly more awake, slightly more amused, slightly more resigned. You reach for the towel hanging on the nail. It's not a towel in the modern sense, more of a fabric suggestion, thin and eternally damp, no matter the weather. You pat your face with it anyway. Rituals matter, even when they make no difference. Your shirt clings to your back now, damp again, whether from the fire's leftover humidity or from your own body, reminding you that layers of wool are a gamble. Either way, it's already losing the battle against the chill seeping in from the walls. You sit back down on the edge of your straw mattress and lace up your boots, or rather, you pretend to. The laces are mostly symbolic. One boot ties, the other just wraps around your ankle like a handshake from a tired snake. It'll hold, probably. Your stomach grumbles loudly. You acknowledge it with a slow nod, as if to say, soon. Whether soon means food or just distraction remains to be seen. You reach for the cloth bag tucked beneath your mattress. Inside is your breakfast, or what passes for it, a chunk of bread, harder than you remember, and a sliver of cheese trying to forget it was once part of something fresher. You chew slowly, carefully. The bread fights back, but you're used to that. Chewing here is not just about nourishment. It's an act of negotiation, of mutual respect between jaw and crust and the cheese. Well, it adds character. While you eat, you watch the light crawl across the wall, filtered through gaps in the wood and dust in the air. It paints slow-moving stripes that remind you of church windows. If the church had been built from leftover fence boards and good intentions, the cat, now descended from his ceiling throne, weaves between your legs. He offers no purr, no affection, just presence. His tail brushes your shin, and for a brief moment, that counts as companionship. You toss him a crumb of bread. He sniffs it, glares, walks away. Fair enough. The door to the room creaks, not open, just in its own time, adjusting to the house's temperature or dreams. It's never quite shut. There's no latch, no real frame, just wood against wood, aging in opposite directions. You glance around the room again. The stove smokes slightly. The wall leans inward like it's whispering secrets to the furniture. The mattress sags where someone just rolled over. It's a home, not by design, but by endurance. And maybe that's enough. You rise slowly again. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders, pulling it tight. It belonged to your grandmother, or someone else's grandmother, passed down through so many hands that it now just belongs to the family. The wool is scratchy, but it traps the heat. You welcome the scratch. You push open the door, letting in a gust of London air, foggy, damp, and smelling faintly of coal smoke and cabbage. The city never sleeps. Not really. It just paces outside. Your breath comes out in clouds. You watch it for a moment, surprised it hasn't turned to frost on contact with your mood. You step into the narrow passage between homes, boots crunching on pebbles and mud. Around you, other doors creak, other lives begin. The city groans to life like a ship setting out to sea. There is something oddly beautiful in its reluctance. But before you leave the threshold, you glance back inside. at the slanted roof, the uneven table, the pail that has not yet overflowed. You don't love it, but you know it, and sometimes, in a world this big and cold, that's enough. You pull the door shut behind you, not that it locks, or even really latches. It mostly leans into the frame, a tired barrier between you and the city, held closed by habit and damp wood. As you turn to face the alley, the cold greets you like an old friend who owes you money and pretends not to notice. The ground beneath your feet is a chaotic mix of cobblestones, mud, and what you desperately hope is just leftover water from the night's rain. The alley smells like soot and wet fabric, with an undertone of something vegetal and slightly accusatory. Somewhere, a cabbage has died a noble but pungent death. You begin your slow shuffle forward. The buildings around you are as weary as your own home, tall, narrow structures leaning against each other for emotional support. Their windows, if they have them, are tiny, fogged, and appear to be holding their breath. The fog hasn't lifted yet. It swirls low to the ground, muffling sound and lending the world the aura of a half-remembered dream. A cart rattles in the distance. Someone curses. A dog barks once, then decides it's not worth the effort. You pass a doorway where someone's hung laundry. A shirt trembles on the line like it just heard a frightening story. The fabric is stiff with cold, frozen into a shape vaguely resembling a shrug. You nod to the figure at the corner, an old man with one eye and the kind of beard that says, "I once had a job." He nods back, solemn and slow, like a tree acknowledging the wind. His coat is patched in more colors than a quilt, and he carries a cane that might actually be a broken broom handle. You walk past him, stepping carefully over a puddle that may be more ambition than depth. The edges are ringed with soot, giving it the appearance of a portal to a more depressing version of this very alley. Ahead, the street begins to widen slightly. Here, you see life stirring. A woman with a basket of rolls, yelling prices no one believes. A group of children chasing a hoop with more joy than the object justifies. A chimney sweep already covered in soot, looking like he was born from the fireplace itself. And then, the corner you know so well, the bakery. The bakery, the one that never quite has enough bread, but always manages to smell like hope. You pause outside, inhaling deeply. The scent is yeasty, warm, and slightly burnt. You let it fill your lungs, pretending it's nourishment. The woman inside meets your eye. You nod. She doesn't smile. You don't expect her to, but she nods back, and that's enough. You exchange 2 copper coins for a loaf that could qualify as a weapon if dried another hour. Still bread. You tear off a piece. The crust scrapes your gums just a little, but the warmth inside is a small, comforting rebellion. It reminds you that yes, things could be worse. They probably will be, but not this exact second. You find a spot on a stone step, more or less dry, and sit. Around you, the city continues to wake. The air buzzes with conversations that mix together into an indistinct hum. Arguments, flirtations, business dealings, all blurred by fog and survival. Above, the buildings loom like judgmental uncles. Windows crack open. Water dumps from a basin onto the street below. You shift slightly, hoping not to be under the next one. As you sit, you glance at your hands, calloused, dry, and a little cracked around the knuckles. They look older than you feel. Or maybe just more honest. You remember, vaguely, a story someone once told, that in the finer houses, floors are made of polished wood, covered in soft rugs, warmed by fireplaces that never go out. That in those homes, rain is something heard against glass, not something you wake up under. Historians still debate how common those luxuries truly were. Some claim most townhouses in Regency London were modest, even for the well-off, but you suspect even their modest feels like heaven compared to your ceiling that dash sweats. You finish the bread slowly, letting the last bite linger. The warmth is gone, but it's not just food, it's an anchor. Proof that you existed in this moment, that you earned this bite, that the world, despite its best efforts, didn't win today. Yet someone walks past and nods. You nod back. It's a silent ritual, an agreement between citizens of the lower bricks that says, we're still here. The fog starts to lift just slightly, enough for a bit of light. It glistens, not prettily, but honestly, like the city has just washed its face and is debating whether to get dressed or crawl back into bed. You rise. From the step and stretch, bones popping softly like a rusty accordion. You adjust your coat, or what remains of it, and begin walking again. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic, but it's what people like you do. You wake, you dress, you walk, you endure, and somewhere in all of that, in the bread, the fog, the nods from strangers, there's something like dignity. You continue down the lane, stepping over a loose cobblestone that once claimed your ankle's dignity. The street here is wider, though not cleaner. Bits of straw, ash, and mysterious puddles mark the way like breadcrumbs for anyone nostalgic. For tetanus. This is the part of town where homes blur into workshops, where the living and the working coexist with the awkward intimacy of two people sharing one bed. You pass a cooper hammering a lid into place, the rhythmic thud echoing like a slow heartbeat through the alley. A tailor sits by the window of her cramped shop, squinting through the morning haze as she stitches what looks like a pair of breeches with the patience of a saint and the finger calluses of a warrior. A fishmonger shouts out prices you know will go down after noon, while a child beside him arranges dead eels in a row like little soldiers fallen in battle. You nod politely and quicken your pace. You're headed to your place of work, a word that suggests stability but rarely delivers it. The building is nondescript, as if it prefers to remain anonymous. It leans slightly to the left, as if exhausted by its own existence. The wooden door sticks. It always sticks. You shoulder it open with the resignation of someone who's done this daily and still holds out hope it'll one day cooperate. Inside, the air changes. It's warmer in a stale way, trapped heat, coal dust, and the scent of effort gone unrewarded. You greet your coworkers with brief nods. No one speaks this early unless required. Conversation comes later, when the hands are too sore to move quickly and the mind needs something to chew on besides regret. Your task today is the same as yesterday and the day before. It involves fabric, or barrels, or metal. The details shift, depending on which employer has the most urgent demand, but the rhythm remains. Work here is repetition with variation, a symphony of scraping, lifting, sorting, and placing. Over and over, as you begin, your muscles slide into the motions like dancers returning to an old routine. They don't like it, but they remember. Hours pass. They always do. Slowly, like treacle on a cold plate. The overseer walks by now and then, a man with a face like a thumbprint and the charisma of a wet sock. He doesn't speak much, unless you're too slow, or too idle, or, heaven forbid, his cane does most of the talking. It taps the floor with authority, a sound that silences, whispers, and straightens spines. You keep your head down and your hands busy. You've learned that attention here is a currency best left unspent. Around you, others labor with the same quiet focus. A boy no older than 12 hauls a sack twice his size. A woman in her 40s, or maybe just a hard 30, wipes her brow with a sleeve that used to be part of a tablecloth. You pause only once, long enough to sip lukewarm tea from a dented tin cup and swallow a bite of bread that somehow got drier since morning. A crumb lodges behind your tooth and stays there like a rude guest. By mid-afternoon, your back begins its protest, a dull ache that sharpens with each twist. You adjust your stance, rotate your shoulder, and continue. The overseer doesn't care about discomfort unless it affects production, and even then, only slightly. Historians still debate the working conditions of the lower classes in Regency England. Some argue they weren't as dire as imagined. Others suggest the imagination still doesn't do them justice. All you know is that your feet hurt before you arrive and your hands hurt after. You leave. You finish your last task as the light begins to change. Not sunset, not yet. Just that moment when the daylight fades in tone, as if it, too, is tired of looking at the same gray bricks and soot-stained windows. The overseer grunts, which somehow counts as permission to leave. You nod to the others and slip back into the street, your body humming with exhaustion and your ears ringing with the sounds of a day you won't remember and can't forget outside. The wind has picked up. It nips at your collar and pushes fog back into the alleys like a mischievous child rearranging furniture. You pull your coat tighter, although it does very little. Warmth is a privilege reserved for those with thick wool, indoor jobs, or favorable marriages. As you walk home, the city feels different. Not quieter, just changed. There's a strange stillness that settles in when work ends, but the night hasn't fully taken hold. People move slowly, doors creak open, fires are lit, bread is broken. You see your home ahead, a slouching shape in the shadows, waiting like a loyal dog with a limp. The door resists again, but you know its weakness. You step inside. The smell greets you first, smoke, sweat, the faint sweetness of something being boiled too long. It's oddly comforting, like slipping into a coat that doesn't fit but still remembers your shape. You cross the room, remove your boots, and lower yourself onto the straw mattress. It exhales under your weight, sending up a puff of dust and memory. The fire in the stove is out. The coals are sleeping. You think about lighting them. You don't. You lie back, staring at the ceiling that's not so much above you as around you. The wood beams creak. Somewhere in the corner, a mouse dares to believe in freedom. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to pause, because tomorrow it all begins again. You wake before the sun, not because of any noble ambition, but because your back decided it had been horizontal long enough. The straw mattress has begun a silent rebellion, shifting beneath you in tufts and knots, whispering complaints through the fabric. A familiar ache settles in your lower spine, a kind of wooden reminder that rest is a relative concept in homes like yours. You sit up slowly, blinking through the dull gray of pre-dawn. The room is cold, but not sharply so. It's a damp kind of chill, one that creeps, clings, and never quite leaves. Your breath clouds in the air, a small, lazy ghost. You listen for a moment. The usual sounds, one of your siblings muttering in their sleep, the gentle creak of wood expanding against the outside air, and the soft scurry of something small, a mouse or the cat, hopefully not both at the same time. You pull on your outer shirt, the one with a collar that never lays flat and cuffs that were once white. It smells like coal smoke and boiled greens, the scent of laundry day having lost the battle to the realities of the kitchen. Across the room, your mother is already awake. She moves silently near the hearth, her back bent in that quiet, permanent curve shared by all women who spend more time leaning over pots and children than standing for themselves. She doesn't speak, she doesn't need to. Her movements write their own sentences. She lifts the lid on a small pot, peers inside, and then stirs with a wooden spoon that could double as a family heirloom. The smell wafts over something between oats and desperation. It's breakfast, or the closest thing to it. You shuffle over, rubbing your hands together not for cleanliness, but friction. She hands you a wooden bowl. The contents are thick, beige, and warm. You're not sure what's in it. Possibly barley, possibly yesterday, but you eat it anyway. At this hour, taste is a luxury. Warmth is enough. As you chew, slowly your sister wakes. She stretches in that boneless way children do, then curls into herself again, pretending not to hear the clatter of morning. Your father is still asleep in the far corner, his snore the deep, steady rumble of a man who spent the previous day bent over crates and now dreams of standing up straight. You finish the bowl and place it on the table, a surface held together by habit and two nails. The tabletop leans gently toward the corner where the legs disagree about height. It has done this for years, and you've learned to eat around the slope. Then, as you always do, you go outside. The sky is pale, like someone tried to paint it, blue but ran out of time. You walk down the narrow alley, past homes with doors that never fully close, and windows that stare blankly into the street. A woman sweeps her stoop with a bundle of twigs tied together, sending dust into the air and mice scurrying beneath the steps. You pass the blacksmith's shop. He's already at work, though the forge is barely breathing. You hear the clink of metal, soft, careful, like someone tuning an iron violin. He nods when he sees you. You nod back, further down. Children are gathering around the lampposts. Not for play, not yet, just to wait. Some for work, some for food, some because it's warmer there than inside. You continue to the church. It's Sunday. The one day of the week that feels different, even if only slightly. The church is old, made of stone and shadow. The front steps are worn smooth by decades. Of tired feet, you climb them slowly, the sound of your soles echoing in the fog inside. The air is cold but dry. The benches are hard. The lighting is dim. You sit near the back, not because you arrived late, but because that's where people like you sit, far from the polished shoes and embroidered gloves of the better dressed, close enough to hear, far enough to be ignored. The preacher begins. His voice rises and falls like a kettle left to boil too long. You listen, not for enlightenment, that's rare, but for rhythm, for familiarity, for that moment when he speaks about humility or obedience or grace, and you feel seen, not by him, but by something older and bigger than the cracked beams above your head. Around you, the congregation shifts and breathes and whispers and coughs. A child drops something. An old man snores quietly and is elbowed by his wife. Two girls in matching bonnets share a giggle they think is silent. Historians still debate the role of church in the lives of the poor during the Regency. Was it comfort or control? Faith or formality? You don't ponder that now. You just sit. You just listen. After the service, people file out slowly. There's no rush. Outside is no warmer than inside. You linger near the steps, warming your hands on a cup of tea offered by a woman with the kind of expression that suggests she's not smiling, just resting her face in a helpful position. You nod. She nods. That's the entire conversation. Then you walk home, slowly, past the same shops, past the same shutters, past a woman yelling at a dog that isn't hers. It's all familiar. That's part of the comfort, the rhythm. When you return, the fire is out again. Your mother scolds someone. Gently, your sister is combing her hair with a fork. Your father is cleaning his boots like they're going to a dance. They're not. You sit near the stove and reach for the kindling. It's Sunday, but that doesn't mean you can rest. Not really. You step back outside after tea, pulling your coat tighter, though it's more a gesture than a solution. The sleeves fall just short of your wrists, and the lining gave up years ago. Still, it's better than nothing, which has been the unofficial motto of your entire wardrobe. The streets on a Sunday afternoon have their own rhythm, slower, softer, like the city is tiptoeing through its obligations. No carts racing down cobbled roads, no merchants yelling about root vegetables, just people milling about with their hands behind their backs, as if carrying invisible burdens too polite to mention. Children weave between the adults, chasing hoops and each other. Their shoes slap against stone, some of them barefoot, most with soles that flap like tongues. You pause to watch them. The laughter rises like birdsong in fog, and for a moment, even your spine feels a little lighter. You remember games like those spinning bits of wood down alleys, hopping between chalk marks on brick walls, racing to see who could find the least moldy apple core in the gutter. Simple pleasures, no batteries, no refunds. Down the block, you hear the thin twang of a fiddle. Someone's practicing for tonight, a gathering, maybe, or just noise to keep the silence from settling in too deep. The notes are off-key but enthusiastic. Like a rooster learning opera, you head toward the small courtyard behind the tenements. It's not a garden, not exactly, just a patch of earth where grass tries to grow and laundry. Lines crosshatch overhead like a game of cat's cradle played by giants. A few neighbors have set out crates as makeshift chairs. A pot bubbles over a low fire. There's talk of stew. There's always talk of stew. You're handed a ladle without being asked. You stir. There's no recipe, just what was on hand. Potatoes, turnips, something green that might have once been celery. A chunk of something unidentifiable floats to the surface. You press it back down with dignity. Someone passes you a cracked mug filled with cider. It's lukewarm and mildly alcoholic enough to warm the chest, not enough to make anyone brave. You sip, you nod. You lean against the wall, letting the heat of the bricks seep into your shoulder. A neighbor to your right starts talking about the rain last week. He's convinced it was a sign of what, he's not sure. His wife interrupts to remind him they need soap. Her voice has the tone of someone who's used that sentence on more occasions than he's earned. You smile into your cup. These people, with their stained aprons, tired eyes, and quick humor, they are your community. They know your debts, your habits, your laundry. They've seen you in your best coat and your worst decisions. And they still pass you, Stu. A young couple dances near the fire. He's in boots, 2 sizes too big. She wears a dress, clearly borrowed. They move with the hesitant grace of people, pretending they don't care who's watching and failing beautifully. You tap your foot along to the rhythm, then stop. The ground is still damp, and your boots are still holding a grudge from last week's puddle. Historians often forget these moments, the unrecorded hours between work and rest, when joy sneaks in through cracked windows and simmering pots, when the poor weren't only surviving, but living, laughing, dancing. Even if briefly you refill your mug, someone hands you a heel of bread, crusty, a little burnt, still warm. You take it, you chew slowly, you let it anchor you overhead. Laundry flaps in the breeze like tired flags. A sock falls. A child chases it. It's not particularly good, but it lands. There's laughter, real, belly-deep laughter. The kind that feels like lighting a candle in a drafty room and watching it survive anyway. As the sun begins to lower, the air cools again. Shadows lengthen. Conversations taper into murmurs. People begin gathering plates, folding cloths, patting down the fire. You help carry a pot inside. You stack cups. You chase down a spoon someone swears was stolen by the dog, who denies everything. Eventually, the courtyard empties. The laughter lingers, echoing against brick and chimney. You walk home slowly, not because you're tired, though you are, but because you want to make the feeling last just a little longer. The light on the buildings turns golden for a breath, then fades into the usual gray. It's always gray, but tonight it feels less heavy. You reach your door and push it open. Inside, the air is warmer than you expected. Someone lit the stove again. A miracle in 3 coals and a sliver of dry wood. Your sister sits at the table, sewing. Your father hums a hymn under his breath, the tune slow and sweet. Your mother rests her feet on a stool, eyes closed, hands still folded in her lap like she's praying even in sleep. You close the door gently. You hang your coat. You sit down, and in that small, uneven room, with its slanted walls and patched ceiling, you feel something that might be mistaken for peace. The stove crackles faintly, a gentle percussion under the evening silence. You sit near it on your usual stool, the one with the slightly tilted leg and the soft groan that announces your weight every time. Your fingers stretch toward the heat, grateful for the illusion of warmth it gives off. It won't last. You know that. Nothing ever phases the night chill in this house, but it tries, and sometimes trying is all there is. The room has settled into its evening rhythm. Your sister continues sewing, head bowed like a monk at prayer, the thread whispering through cloth with steady grace. Her needle glints faintly in the firelight, quick as a cat, never hesitant. She's mending your father's work shirt again, third patch on the elbow, sixth on the cuff. At this point, the fabric is more story than shirt. Your mother stirs beside the hearth. She isn't asleep, not really, just in that liminal state between rest and readiness, like she's listening for a child's cry that never comes anymore. Her face is calm in the glow, soft around the edges, but her hands, even folded, look like they could braid rope or break a hen's neck without blinking. And then there's your father, humming. It's not for performance. It's not even for comfort. It's just what he does when the day is done. A tune no one knows the words to, handed down from someone who likely made it up, sung at the same volume, whether you're alone or surrounded by 12 people. It's part lullaby, part act of defiance against the day's silence. You look around the room. The same cracked mug sits on the same shelf. The same coat hangs by the door, more whole than cloth now. The same broom leans into the corner, crooked in both shape and work ethic. Everything familiar, everything in its place. You pick up your cup, warm water with a sprig of mint someone bartered from the alley market. You sip, it's bitter, but it's yours. Then someone knocks at the door, not loud, not fast, just enough to make you freeze. Mid-sip, your father rises with a grunt, walking over in that deliberate way of someone whose knees speak louder than his words. He opens the door slowly. It's the neighbor, Mrs. Withers, wrapped in 3 shawls, and her usual expression of dignified irritation. She holds a basket. Inside, a loaf of bread, slightly overcooked, and 2 apples that have clearly seen better seasons. A bit extra from supper, she says. Translation: she made too much, and would rather you have it than it go to waste, or worse, to the rats. You thank her. She grumbles something about keeping warm, and shuffles off, slippers slapping the stones like punctuation marks. The door shuts again, and just like that, you have dessert. You cut the loaf, careful not to break the knife. The crust resists, but the inside is soft, not quite fresh, but fresher than what you had this morning. The apples are slightly wrinkled, but when you bite in, they crunch just enough to make your teeth remember autumn. As the family eats in quiet gratitude, the house creaks, not ominously, just in its usual voice. The beams shift, the wind finds its favorite corner to whistle through. The ceiling sighs, as if glad the day is almost over. Historians often focus on the grand events of the Regency period, the wars, the romances, the politics, the powdered wigs, but homes like yours don't make it into the books. They don't get monuments. They get memories, quiet ones, the kind passed down in stories told over lukewarm tea and patchy FIRELIGHT. Your brother, just home from his apprenticeship, arrives with cheeks red from the wind and fingers numb from carrying coal. He stomps twice, removes his boots, and drops onto the floor with the sort of exhausted grace only the truly young can manage. You hand him the last slice of bread. He nods thanks with his mouth already full. The fire burns low. You add a stick, watching it catch slowly, like someone waking from a long nap. Outside, the fog has thickened. You can see it gathering at the window's edge, curling around the sill like it's looking for a way in. Inside, the family moves like a clock, each person in rhythm, the stitch, the hum, the crackle, the breath. It's choreography without rehearsal. You all just know your parts. You lean your head back against the wall, the chill seeping in even through your collar. You pull the shawl tighter. Bring your knees to your chest and listen to the quiet to the creaks, to the life that hums just beneath the silence. No one says good night, not here, not really. You just move gradually from waking to resting, from talking to breathing. Your sister finishes her sewing and sets the shirt aside. Your father nods toward the stove. Your mother finally opens her eyes and sighs, just once. Like that's all the commentary the day needs. You stretch out on the mattress. It's still warm from earlier. You share it, of course, with your brother tonight. He's already snoring softly, one arm dangling off the side, like he's waving to ghosts. You pull the blanket up. It smells like home, like smoke, like steam, like dust and wool, and the kind of love that never quite says its name aloud. And as your eyes grow heavy, you hear the wind again. Outside it howls like a creature looking for cracks. Inside, the fire whispers, "Not tonight, not tonight." The next morning greets you not with sunlight, but with the kind of gray that feels personal. It's not raining exactly, just damp in a way that makes everything, including your mood, slightly heavier than it ought to be. The blanket slides off your shoulders like it, too, has decided today isn't worth much effort. Your brother mumbles in his sleep. You step over him carefully, navigating around elbows and the occasional creaking floorboard. The fire is out. Naturally, a few sad coals huddle at the bottom of the stove, like party guests waiting for the host to come back with something, anything, you throw on your clothes. The same ones as yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. They still smell faintly of onions, firewood, and responsibility. You lace your boots in the dark. The laces are uneven, and one of the eyelets has rusted. But you manage. Breakfast is theoretical. There's a pot, yes, and something inside it, a sort of broth. You drink it anyway, letting the warmth do what it can. You head out. It's early. The streets are slick, not with fresh rain, but with the leftover condensation of a city that breathes in soot and exhales puddles. Horses clop in the distance. A child runs past with one mitten and an impressive vocabulary for that age. You arrive at your employer's house, a 3-story townhouse with windows that close properly and a bell on the door that works when tapped, not pounded. You don't use the front door, of course. You enter through the side, the servant's entrance, a narrow hallway with a coat, hook, a cracked mirror, and boots that seem better fed than you. You hang your shawl, tie your apron, and step into the kitchen. The cook is already there, muttering to herself in a language you only half understand. She's stirring a pot large enough to bathe in, with steam curling upward like ghosts trying to escape before being used as garnish. The kitchen smells incredible. Rosemary, meat, something baked. You're not allowed to eat it, of course, but smelling is still free. You scrub the floor first, always the floor. Cold tile that mocks you with every splash of soapy water. Then it's the hearth, the brass polish, the stairs, the banisters, all of it done in near silence, broken only by the occasional command or a grunt from the cook when the soup tries to boil over. Later, the master of the house appears. He doesn't greet you, just glides past in boots that cost more than your family earns in a month, trailing the scent of expensive tobacco and mild disapproval. You don't mind much. You know your place. Historians write about Regency society in chapters labeled Manners and Morality, but they rarely mention how much of that refinement was built on the backs of hands like yours, quiet, calloused, invisible. You're called to help with the table. Linens so white you hesitate to touch them. Silver polished to a blinding gleam. Plates that seem too delicate to hold anything with weight. You serve tea. From behind the guest's chair, of course, pouring gently, perfectly. No spills, no sound. You disappear before your presence is remembered. You hear them talk about politics, about dresses, about the weather, as if they control it. One woman says she's simply exhausted from choosing new drapes. You resist the urge to offer her your boots for an afternoon. Later, when the guests have gone and the plates have been cleared, you return to the kitchen. You wipe, you sweep, you scrape, you glance at the leftovers. You know better than to take any without permission. But the cook, seeing the hunger behind your eyes, tosses you a crust of bread and the last spoonful of stew. You eat standing up, fast, before someone changes their mind. Then you return to your tasks. You polish a vase. You carry coal to the upper bedrooms. You fetch water from the pump in the back alley, the handle stiff with cold, the bucket always leaking from the seam. Near the bottom, when the work is done, or at least paused until tomorrow, you untie your apron and slip back into your shawl. You walk home. The streets are darker now. Lamps flicker behind windows. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys. A dog barks in the distance, followed by a stern hush and the sound of a broom handle meeting something wooden. You reach your door, open it, step inside. The house is dim, warmer, maybe. Your father has returned from the yard. Your mother hums as she finishes mending socks. Your sister combs out the knots in her hair. Dinner is thin stew with more broth than ingredients, but you're too tired to notice. You eat it gratefully, slowly, spoon clinking against the side of the bowl, in rhythm with the fire's crackle. No one talks much tonight, but that's fine. Some silences are full of understanding. You rinse your bowl and place it upside down on the shelf. You check the stove, still glowing, a miracle. You sit down on the straw mattress, stretch your arms, and yawn. Not politely, fully. Your brother is already snoring. Your sister mutters something about needing thread. You lie back and close your eyes. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. Not because it's easy, but because it's life. The cold creeps in before dawn even breaks. You're not quite asleep, not quite awake, just hovering in that misty realm where dreams still echo and the reality of damp wool and straw bedding hasn't fully reclaimed you. A drop of water plinks into the wash basin rhythmically, like a clock that forgot what time is. The wind presses against the boards of the house. The walls protest softly, the way old bones do. You pull the covers tighter, which helps not at all. They are thin and vaguely damp from yesterday's breath. The fire is out again, obviously. Even the embers have called it quits. Your breath curls in front of your face, like a ghost checking in. Your father is already up, boots scraping the floor as he dresses. He doesn't talk much in the morning, just clears his throat, spits once in the corner, a tradition, apparently, and goes out to work. You stay behind a few minutes longer, reluctant to leave the barely warm dent you've made in the mattress. Eventually, you rise. The floor is cold, colder than it has any right to be. You step lightly as if the boards might be offended. You dress quickly, shirt, bodice, apron, shawl, each layer stiff with yesterday. Buttons fight back, laces are uneven. Everything smells like soap. That gave up halfway. Breakfast, such como it is reheated porridge. There's a certain elegance to it if you squint and pretend it's pudding. A single knob of something yellowish floats in the middle. Butter, fat, philosopher's stone. Doesn't matter, it's yours. You eat silently, listening to the familiar sound of your sister complaining about her cold feet and your brother arguing with the cat. No one wins that argument. The cat always gets the good spot near the coals. Then it's time for church. Sunday best is a kind term. Your dress has been mended so many times it qualifies as a quilt. Still, it's clean. That's what counts. You and your family walk briskly, elbows tucked close to your sides, not for warmth, but because there's simply no room on the sidewalk. Other families walk the same route. You recognize some faces, neighbors, acquaintances, the lady who once traded half a loaf of bread for a worn pair of gloves. Everyone keeps their eyes down, not out of shame, but out of custom. It's too early for chatting. The church looms. Ahead, it's not the grand cathedral with spires that pierce the sky. No, that one is for the richer set. Yours is modest. Stone walls, wooden pews, a bell that only rings when someone kicks it right. But it smells of wax and hope, which counts. For more, you file in, sit quietly, hands folded. The sermon begins. You try to listen. You really do. But the minister's voice is like warm milk left on the stove too long, gentle at first, then oddly shrill, then back to being gentle. He talks about righteousness, about humility, about enduring hardship with grace. You resist the urge to glance over your shoulder at the nobility in their reserved seats. Their plumes gleam, their gloves are bright, their hats have plumes that deserve their own titles. When it's over, you stand, stretch discreetly, your knees crack. You smile at no one in particular. Back home, the midday meal is bread and broth. Again, no one complains. That's just how it is. You eat it with a wooden spoon that has lost its handle to the teeth of time. Or maybe your brother, during a particularly intense phase of teething. The afternoon stretches out before you. There's laundry to be done. Not with a machine, but with elbow grease, a wash tub, and prayers. The water is cold. The soap is lye. You scrub, twist, rinse, repeat. You lay the clothes out to dry. The sun makes a half-hearted appearance behind a curtain of clouds, like a reluctant actor called in on his day off. Still, it's enough. You watch the steam rise gently from the fabric. It's the most poetic thing you'll see today, later. There's a bit of free time. Free time means you're allowed to sit without being actively yelled at. Your sister braids her hair. Your brother carves something from a bit of wood, maybe. A horse, maybe a spoon, maybe a very small chair for a very small ghost. You mend socks. You've become quite good at it. Not out of passion, but necessity. Holes form with alarming speed. Needles vanish. Thread tangles. And yet you stitch. You always stitch. The evening comes fast. The sky turns gray, then lavender, then nothing. Lamps are lit. Fires coaxed back into life with newspaper, kindling, and optimism. Dinner is more of the same. You don't even bother describing it aloud anymore. But tonight, there's something special. A bit of treacle, just a spoonful, tucked in the corner of a slice of bread. It's enough to make you close your eyes while eating. A luxury of sensation. The kind of moment you tuck into the drawer of your memory and pull out on worse days. After the meal, someone tells a story. You think it's your uncle, but it could be the neighbor from down the hall. He's here often enough. The story is about a goose and a shoemaker, and possibly a ghost. The plot doesn't matter. It's the rhythm that counts. The voice, the warmth. You laugh once. It surprises you. Then bedtime. Straw is fluffed. Blankets are redistributed. The cat claims the warmest spot again. Your brother snores before his head hits the pillow. Your sister whispers good night in a voice smaller than usual. You lie down. The roof groans above you. The fire hisses once more, and you sleep. Not because everything is fine. Morning breaks slowly, more out of obligation than enthusiasm. The light filters through the thin, soot-stained cloth you've nailed over the cracked window. Less curtain, more suggestion of privacy. You blink into the day with the resigned determination of someone who already knows their shoes are still wet from yesterday. The first sound you register, besides the creak of the settling roof, is your neighbor sneezing violently through the wall again. A reliable soundtrack to your life. You stretch beneath the blanket, which smells faintly of smoke, cabbage, and something best left unexamined. Rising isn't dramatic. You sort of unfold. Your limbs ache not from yesterday's labor, but from how cold it is to exist. You touch the floor and instantly regret it. It's not so much a floor as a chilled promise of discomfort. Today is Sunday, which should mean rest. For you, it means pretending you have clean clothes and attending church with a level of reverence appropriate for someone who just scraped mud off their only shoes with a spoon. You and your family make your way down the narrow lane. Other families do the same, some dressed more finely, most looking like a catalogue of patched dignity. The church looms ahead, its steeple piercing the dull sky like it's trying to escape. Inside, the wooden pews are cold enough to inspire repentance. You squeeze in, wedged between your brother and a woman who smells sharply of lavender and boiled onions. The sermon is long, looping, and strangely fixated on the moral threat of dancing. Historians still debate, you think, whether these sermons shaped behavior or simply gave everyone something to complain about on the walk home. You follow along as best you can, though a good chunk of your energy goes to keeping your stomach from growling at cathedral volume. During the hymn, your voice joins a river of tired harmony. Someone hits a sour note. No one flinches. Afterward, the congregation trickles out into the misty air. Some linger to chat. You notice how the wealthier parishioners' coats seem to shimmer with dryness. A magical property your own garments steadfastly lack. Lunch today is a shared loaf and some thin broth. There's talk of maybe getting an egg next week. Your uncle claims to know a man who knows a man with chickens. You try not to get your hopes up. The last time someone promised eggs, you ended up with one duck feather and a mysterious rash dot. You sit with your sister, mending socks, as she tells you the latest from the neighbor girl, apparently. She's been seen speaking with a chimney sweep behind the apothecary. Scandal, soot, and possibly love. You nod as if you understand. All three later. You walk along the edge of town, just to feel air that hasn't passed through 6 mouths before reaching your lungs. The fields are winter empty, dotted with bare trees and stubborn birds. You find a rock, sit down, and pretend you're somewhere else. A carriage rumbles past in the distance. Inside, a lady tilts her head toward the window, never seeing you. Wonder what it would be like to live in her world. Powdered gloves, warm boots, actual bedding. Then you remember that even nobles can't stop a drafty house from being a nuisance. But they do have fireplaces that don't double as chimneys. Evening begins to stretch across the sky like a wool blanket being tugged too thin. You make your way home, shoes muddy again, heart full of something that might be called peace, or might just be resignation with good lighting. Dinner is the same as always, but somehow it tastes warmer tonight. Maybe it's the candlelight. Maybe it's the company. Maybe it's the memory of that duck feather. You help your father tidy up while your mother hums a tune that doesn't have a name but always shows up on Sundays. Your little brother falls asleep against your shoulder. You let him. The bed feels less damp tonight. Or maybe you're just used to it. The cat curls up beside you with the air of royalty visiting commoners. You don't protest. He's warmer than the blanket. As your breathing slows and the drip drip begins again from the roof. You realize that for all the drafts, the noise, the work, and the worry, you are not alone. And somehow that is enough. Sleep begins not like a wave, but like a curtain, gentle, slow, drawn quietly over the theater of your thoughts. Your breath steadies. The world softens. The corners of the room seem to melt into one another. The candle beside your bed flickers for the last time, then gives in, its tiny flame surrendering to the night. Outside, the wind has calmed. The goteras have slowed, forming small, predictable rhythms, like an old lullaby learned from the rain. Somewhere in the alley, a cat sings its off-key ballad to the moon. You barely notice. Your body eases further into the mattress, if it can be called that, and the straw no longer itches. It cradles, it holds. You are warm now, not by fire, but by nearness. Your family sleeps nearby, each breath a quiet promise of tomorrow. Even in the cold, in the dark, in the simplicity, you are safe. The night is long, but so is rest. And when morning comes again, it will be familiar. The light, the sounds, the weight of the air. You will rise with them, and you will carry on, as you always have. For now, though, you stay, wrapped in quiet, anchored by breath, cradled by the quiet hum of a world still spinning. You drift, not into dreams of castles or crowns, but into something truer, a soft, slow remembering that even in the humblest corner of London, even in damp sheets and borrowed warmth, there is dignity, there is stillness, there is peace. The next day begins with a drip, not metaphorically, it's quite literally a drip, right onto your forehead. You blink awake, eyes adjusting to the gray haze of another damp morning. The ceiling above you, warped and mottled, carries the memory of too many storms and not enough repairs. A tiny leak has found the one gap in the patchwork cloth that was meant to be your roof. You sigh and shift your pillow to avoid the rogue droplet. It doesn't help much, but at this point, your standards for comfort are as low as the ceiling itself. The others in the room are still asleep. Your sister mutters something incoherent and flings an arm across your stomach. The cat has somehow nested in your scarf, a regal tuft of fur atop your only warm garment. Of course, Your joints protest like old hinges. Morning stretches aren't exactly fashionable, but in your case, they're survival. Today, you're expected at the bakery, not because you're training to be a baker, let's not be ridiculous, but because Mrs. Hargraves needs someone to sweep, carry flour sacks, and scrub the counters. And you need to eat. It's a practical arrangement built on mutual exhaustion. The streets are quieter in the early hours, and there's a strange poetry in that. Fog clings to the cobblestones, wrapping the lamplight in soft halos. Your breath puffs before you like a timid ghost. A milk cart rumbles by, pulled by a pony who looks like he knows too much. A few shopkeepers are unlocking their shutters, muttering greetings, or just muttering dot at the bakery. Warmth greets you like an old friend, albeit one who's covered in flour and judgment. Mrs. Hargraves hands you a broom without saying a word. She doesn't believe in small talk before tea. You respect that. The bakery smells like cinnamon, yeast, and ambition. You sweep crumbs from under tables, wipe butter from counters, and stack trays that are still warm from the oven. It's physical work, but there's a rhythm to it, a quiet choreography of useful hands and rising dough. You break for tea near the oven, holding your tin mug close like a secret. The baker's apprentice, a boy with a lopsided smile and too much flour in his hair, offers you a bite of something that might be a scone. It's dry, but it's food. You accept it with gratitude and a joke about how chewing it might count as exercise. By midday, the bakery is bustling. Children press their noses to the window, hopeful for leftover buns. A man in a cravat complains that the bread is too crusty. You resist the urge to ask if his spirit is the same dot. Around 2, Mrs. Hargraves dismisses you with a grunt and a coin. It's more than the seamstress gave you yesterday. Progress. You walk home slower this time, not because you're tired, although you are, but because you're trying to memorize the city in its softer moments. The way the rooftops line up like uneven teeth, the way pigeons strut with too much confidence, the smell of roasting chestnuts from a cart, carried briefly on the wind before vanishing into chimney smoke. You pass a small park. There's a child chasing a hoop, a dog chasing the child, and someone's hat chasing the wind. No one seems bothered. It's just Tuesday, back home. The afternoon fades into domestic noise. Your mother is ironing with a brick wrapped in cloth. Your brother is attempting to fix a chair with string, hope, and an optimistic hammer. Your father is trying to nap despite the racket. You find a quiet corner and pull out a book. It's missing the cover and half of chapter 3, but it's yours. The story doesn't matter as much as the act of reading a way to leave your body behind for a while. Dinner is stew again. This time, it includes something that might have once been a turnip. You're not asking questions. You eat, talk little, and laugh more than you expected to as night settles. The temperature drops with theatrical flair. You huddle by the fire, sharing the last of the coal. Blankets are rationed. You wrap yourself in your coat. The cat claims the warmest spot, as always. No one contests it anymore. You prepare for bed by washing your face in water that feels personally offended by the idea of warmth. Then it's into bed, where the cold sheets greet you like distant relatives, familiar, but not especially kind. Outside, the wind moans through the cracks. Inside, your family breathes in sleep rhythms, the soundtrack of survival. You close your eyes. The Ceiling still drips. You turn your pillow again, and you wait. Not for morning, just for the peace that comes before it. The night deepens, and so tambum, the cold. You lie still under your thin, patched blanket, a reluctant participant in the evening's chill. The walls around you creak as the wood contracts, groaning like an old man complaining about his joints. The candle stub you lit earlier has long since flickered out, leaving the room in a hush of layered darkness. But there is no true silence. Not here. You hear the soft snore of your father, which occasionally shifts into something resembling a groan or a whistle. Your little brother coughs in his sleep. Someone in the tenement next door is still arguing, their voice muffled by thin walls and thicker pride. And from above, there's the rhythmic dripping, the roof's leaky chorus, which has kept tempo with your thoughts for hours. You shift positions, seeking that impossible comfort zone, warm enough to not shiver, but not so hot that you start sweating in your woolen socks. It's like negotiating a treaty with your own body. Your bed isn't much of a bed, a sack stuffed with straw, flattened from years of effort, and shaped roughly like a disappointed pancake. But it's yours, and it doesn't creak as much as your brother's, which is a small miracle. Eventually, the quiet gets to you, not the lack of noise, but the texture of it. The way it sneaks into your ears and starts playing tricks with your imagination. You begin to wonder if the night will ever end, so you think about tomorrow. Maybe it won't rain. Maybe Mr. Keating at the fish stall will let you scrape the barrels. Again, for a few coins, maybe the girl from the bootmaker's shop will glance your way and smile, and maybe you'll pretend not to notice. Maybe your mother will find time to tell that ridiculous story about her aunt, who swore she once met a ghost who complimented her pie crust. You fall asleep thinking about pie crust, but not for long, because a few hours later, you're awake again. This time, it's not the drip, it's the wind. London's winter wind doesn't howl like a wolf. It sighs, slowly, deliberately, like it's tired of warning people, and has resigned itself to just being cold and annoying. It slips through the smallest of cracks, creeps beneath doors, caresses your ankles like an unwanted admirer. You pull your blanket up to your chin and brace yourself. Mornings in winter don't arrive so much as sneak in. You feel it before you, see it, the change in air, the weight of a sky going from black to dark gray. You rise with a slow groan, every limb stiff and uncooperative. Your nose is cold, your toes are numb. Your breath is visible in the air, and for a second you pretend you're a dragon, a very underfed, underpaid dragon with respiratory issues. You get dressed under the blanket, a skill you've mastered. It's the only way to avoid the full body slap of the cold. Breakfast is leftover bread. It has a chewiness that could be legally defined as hostile, but it's food. You dunk it into a mug of lukewarm tea that tastes faintly of metal and stronger of leaves that have already given up. Then it's back out into the city. The streets are slick with last night's mist, the cobblestones glistening like an apology. Horse droppings steam in the cold air, a reminder that modern sanitation is still a century away. You pass chimney sweeps already blackened with soot, their faces comically solemn as they march like weary little soldiers into fireplaces. You overhear bits of conversation. Did you hear what the Duchess wore? 3 layers of velvet in this economy. I'd settle for 3 layers of socks in the marketplace. the vendors shout half-heartedly. A fishmonger grins at you with exactly 2 teeth and offers you the head of a cod for 2pence. You decline. You pass the rag-and-bone man with his cart. He's singing again, always a love song, always off-key. He waves. You nod, then you see it. A small commotion near the baker's. A boy, maybe 7 years old, is being scolded for stealing a roll. He's barefoot, dirty, and terrified. You recognize the baker. She's not cruel, just tired. She sighs, hands the boy the roll anyway, and shoos him off. No one applauds, no one comments. It's just ... life. Historians still debate whether such everyday acts of kindness were common or rare in the Regency era. Some argue that compassion was a luxury. Others say the poor understood each other too well not to share what little they had. You lean toward the second theory. You've lived it. By midday, your hands are raw from work. Today, it's sweeping the front of a print shop and running errands for a man who insists on calling you young sir. Even though you're neither, he pays you in pennies and advice. The pennies are useful. The advice is mostly about socks. Return home as the light fades. Your mother is mending a coat. Your sister is boiling something suspicious. The cat has found a sunspot the size of a dinner plate and claimed it with the intensity of a monarch asserting divine right. Dinner is marginally better than yesterday. Your father found a bit of meat. No one asks where. Everyone eats that night. You lie in bed again. Same roof, same drip, same dreams. The morning mist hangs low and stubborn, like the mood of a shopkeeper during inventory. You awaken again, limbs curled instinctively for warmth, listening to the soft chorus of your family's breathing. Somewhere beyond the cracked wall, a rooster announces the day like it's proud of the gray. You're reluctant to get up, and honestly, who could blame you? The blanket is barely thicker than a curtain, but under it lies the last patch of warmth in London. You try negotiating with the morning, like a gambler down to their last coin, but eventually reality wins. Outside, the day is wrapped in a woolen fog. The cobbled alleys glisten with frost, and each step echoes like it's trying to find its way home. Your first errand takes you through the back streets, where laundry lines stretch across narrow lanes like hopeful flags. A woman pours steaming water onto her stoop to wash away yesterday's grime, only for it to freeze into an elegant hazard the moment she turns away. You sidestep it with the grace of someone who's done this dance before. A man selling roasted chestnuts nods at you, smoke curling upward like incense from a street-side altar. You can't afford one, but you enjoy the scent, a brief, luxurious warmth curling into your nose. Today, your job is at the apothecary. You sweep the stone floor, careful not to disturb the rows of bottles with faded labels. Foxglove, laudanum, oil of wormwood. Some smell like hope, others like trouble with a cork. The apothecary lets you crush dried herbs with a mortar and pestle. It feels oddly satisfying, like smashing tiny, crunchy problems. He tells you about bleeding techniques and beetle-based remedies with the confidence of a man who believes in everything but soap. Historians still debate whether these practitioners truly helped or merely extended the misery with flair. Either way, you're just here for the coin. And maybe the stories. You hear one about a widow who swears by onion poultices for everything from head colds to heartbreak. Another about a nobleman who who imported exotic frogs, believing they cured gout. You nod with a straight face, but make a mental note to stay away from frogs. Lunch is a heel of bread and a sliver of cheese wrapped in cloth. You eat it sitting on a barrel, your feet swinging just above the muddy street. A rat scurries by with a crumb in its mouth like it's late for dinner with relatives. You salute it. It ignores you. Typical. Back home, the house is louder than usual. Your aunt has come to visit. She's arguing with your mother about the merits of boiled cabbage versus roasted turnips. No one will win, but the debate is heated. Unlike the soup, you escape to the stoop. Watching the neighborhood shuffle past, a group of boys play with a hoop and stick, their laughter rising like steam from a kettle. Two older women lean close, whispering the kind of gossip that travels faster than the mail. And at the end of the lane, a preacher on a box shouts about sin and salvation. Most ignore him. A few nod. One woman spits. Evening falls, early in winter. The sky turns a sullen purple, and your fingers begin to stiffen with cold. Inside, your sister lights a tallow candle, which immediately fills the room with the comforting smell of burning animal fat. Assuming you find that comforting, dinner is stew, possibly turnip, possibly regret. You eat it anyway. Afterwards, you help your mother patch an old coat using thread so thin it's practically symbolic. You do your best. She doesn't complain. Later, your father sits near the hearth telling a story. Something about a boy who became a knight after saving a lord's dog from drowning in a canal. You're pretty sure he made it up, but you let him have it. After all, who doesn't want to believe in upward mobility? Night arrives with its usual sharp breath. You huddle into bed, trying to warm your feet between your knees like a badly organized human sandwich. The cat sneaks in again and claims a spot near your belly. You let it. It's warmer than most things in your life. Above, the drip continues, reliable as taxes, and as you drift off, your mind plays back the day like a play in slow motion. The frozen step, the smoky chestnuts, the onion cure, the rat, the stew, your father's ridiculous story. They fold into one another like layers of a dream that doesn't quite make sense, but feels oddly complete. And for a moment, as sleep pulls, you wonder, was today ordinary or a miracle? Historians still debate whether the lives of the poor in Regency London were defined more by suffering or resilience. Most agree on this. They found ways to endure, to laugh, to love, and occasionally to nap. And as your breathing slows and your body relaxes into the familiar ache of rest, the candle flickers once, then goes out. Morning breaks slowly, more out of obligation than enthusiasm. The light filters through the thin, soot-stained cloth you've nailed over the cracked window. Less curtain, more suggestion of privacy. You blink into the day with the resigned determination of someone who already knows their shoes are still wet from yesterday. The first sound you register, besides the creak of the settling roof, is your neighbor sneezing violently through the wall again. A reliable soundtrack to your life. You stretch beneath the blanket, which smells faintly of smoke, cabbage, and something best left unexamined. Rising isn't dramatic, you sort of unfold. Your limbs ache not from yesterday's labor, but from how cold it is to exist. You touch the floor and instantly regret it. It's not so much a floor as a chilled promise of discomfort. Today is Sunday, which should mean rest. For you, it means pretending you have clean clothes and attending church with a level of reverence appropriate for someone who just scraped mud off their only shoes with a spoon. You and your family make your way down the narrow lane. Other families do the same, some dressed more finely, most looking like a catalogue of patched dignity. The church looms ahead, its steeple piercing the dull sky like it's trying to escape. Inside, the wooden pews are cold enough to inspire repentance. You squeeze in, wedged between your brother and a woman who smells sharply of lavender and boiled onions. The sermon is long, looping, and strangely fixated on the moral threat of dancing. Historians still debate, you think, whether these sermons shaped behavior or simply gave everyone something to complain about on the walk home. You follow along as best you can, though a good chunk of your energy goes to keeping your stomach from growling at cathedral volume. During the hymn, your voice joins a river of tired harmony. Someone hits a sour note. No one flinches. Afterward, the congregation trickles out into the misty air. Some linger to chat. You notice how the wealthier parishioners' coats seem to shimmer with dryness, a magical property your own garments steadfastly lack. Lunch today is a shared loaf and some thin broth. There's talk of maybe getting an egg next week. Your uncle claims to know a man who knows a man with chickens. You try not to get your hopes up. The last time someone promised eggs, you ended up with one duck feather and a mysterious rash dot. You sit with your sister, mending socks, as she tells you the latest from the neighbor girl, apparently. She's been seen speaking with a chimney sweep behind the apothecary. Scandal, soot, and possibly love. You nod as if you understand. All three later. You walk along the edge of town, just to feel air that hasn't passed through 6 mouths before reaching your lungs. The fields are winter empty, dotted with bare trees and stubborn birds. You find a rock, sit down, and pretend you're somewhere else. A carriage rumbles past in the distance. Inside, a lady tilts her head toward the window, never seeing you. Wonder what it would be like to live in her world. Powdered gloves, warm boots, actual bedding. Then you remember that even nobles can't stop a drafty house from being a nuisance. But they do have fireplaces that don't double as chimneys. Evening begins to stretch across the sky like a wool blanket being tugged too thin. You make your way home. Shoes muddy again, heart full of something that might be called peace, or might just be resignation with good lighting. Dinner is the same as always, but somehow it tastes warmer tonight. Maybe it's the candlelight. Maybe it's the company. Maybe it's the memory of that duck feather. You help your father tidy up while your mother hums. A tune that doesn't have a name but always shows up on Sundays. Your little brother falls asleep against your shoulder. You let him. The bed feels less damp tonight. Or maybe you're just used to it. The cat curls up beside you with the air of royalty visiting commoners. You don't protest. He's warmer than the blanket. As your breathing slows and the drip begins again from the roof. You realize that for all the drafts, the noise, the work, and the worry, you are not alone, and somehow that is enough. Sleep begins not like a wave, but like a curtain, gentle, slow, drawn quietly over the theater of your thoughts. Your breath steadies. The world softens. The corners of the room seem to melt into one another. The candle beside your bed flickers for the last time, then gives in. its tiny flame surrendering to the night. Outside, the wind has calmed. The goteras have slowed, forming small, predictable rhythms, like an old lullaby learned from the rain. Somewhere in the alley, a cat sings its off-key ballad to the moon. You barely notice. Your body eases further into the mattress, if it can be called that, and the straw no longer itches. It cradles, it holds. You are warm now, not by fire, but by nearness. Your family sleeps nearby, each breath a quiet promise of tomorrow. Even in the cold, in the dark, in the simplicity, you are safe. The night is long, but so is rest. And when morning comes again, it will be familiar. The light, the sounds, the weight of the air. You will rise with them, and you will carry on, as you always have. For now, though, you stay, wrapped in quiet, anchored by breath, cradled by the quiet hum of a world still spinning. You drift, not into dreams of castles or crowns, but into something truer, a soft, slow remembering that even in the humblest corner of London, even in damp sheets and borrowed warmth, there is dignity, there is stillness, there is peace.